Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start. I am Amra Sabic-El-Rayess, Executive Director of the International Interfaith Research Lab, and it is my honor to welcome you to Pathways to Prevention, a symposium on building resilience to hate. We gather here today to celebrate the power of storytelling. Stories are portals that invite each one of us into the rich and meaningful worlds of our fellow family members, classmates, colleagues, peers, and fellow citizens. As we bear witness to the wars across the world, the acts of targeted violence affecting communities at the intersection of identities, I am often asked, where do you see hope? I see hope in the very stories of resilience that we have the honor and privilege of listening to today. I see hope in the visions for a safer, united America that we will see through the reflections of young change makers and leaders featured on the panels today. I see hope in the mission of the International Interfaith Research Lab and my team, who works tirelessly to build resilience to hate across the United States and the world. For those of you who are attending an event hosted by the lab for the first time, welcome. Our work at the Interfaith Lab explores the factors that drive individuals and societies to extremism. We have identified a process we call educational displacement, the profound disaffection students can experience when their schools fail to create a sense of belonging. These young people who experience educational displacement and harbor an unaddressed grievance may follow a path toward self-exclusion and ultimately violent expression motivated by a narrative of hate. To counter this pathway of radicalization, we identify protective practices that build our collective resilience to hate. And we conduct courses, trainings, and workshops aimed at building local, national, and global champions of violence prevention. Linking all of these efforts is our use of storytelling, by which I mean co-creating diverse narratives cutting across cultures, languages, and geographies that cultivate understanding, empathy, and human connection. This focus grows out of my own experience in the 1990s growing up as a Bosnian Muslim during the genocide against my people. Amidst this horrific brutality, many of us practice our resilience to hate by refusing to demonize others on the basis of their ethnicity, religion, language, or culture. Having spoken at more than 200 K-12 classrooms, universities, and communities across the US and internationally about my own story of resilience to hate as told in my two memoirs, The Cat I Never Named and 3 Summers, I try to bring readers into the minds of young characters who care about their families, about education, about falling in love, and about one another, even during a genocide. I often tell educators, parents, and students, if you see the characters in my memoirs, then you enhance your capacity to empathize with those around you who may be different than who you are. Stories of resilience to hate compel us to recognize others as fellow human beings. And when we do that, we're more likely to reject hate-fueled violence. I can think of no more powerful example of this truth than the experience of one of our panelists today, Richard McKinney. Richard is a former Marine who served several tours of duty in Afghanistan, where he perceived Muslims as the enemy. After returning home to Muncie, Indiana, affected by his experience in combat, Richard became obsessed with the idea that all Muslims were evil and that those living in the United States were dedicated to destroying this country and harming Americans. This idea took such a powerful hold of his thinking that Richard planned to detonate a bomb in front of a local Islamic center. He began visiting the center to further map out that plan, and then a transformative thing happened. As described in the documentary, Stranger at the Gate, the Muslim community in that center welcomed Richard with love and kindness. They invited him to events and gave him a sense of community that had been lacking in his life since he had left the US military. And gradually, over the next 8 weeks, Richard let go of the hatred in his heart and abandoned a plan that would likely have resulted in the deaths of hundreds of innocent people. Richard's story shows us what is possible when we recognize the humanity of others and allow ourselves to feel connected to them. This is the protective power of our collective resilience to hate. Our fellow panelists today are leading voices engaged in the field of violence prevention. And over the next few hours, we are fortunate to listen to their stories of resilience to hate and how this translates into their life's work. Our first panel, which I will moderate, is titled Resilience to Hate, Storytelling as a Portal to Prevention. Joining Richard on the panel are Joshua Seftel, the Oscar-nominated and Emmy-winning director who tells Richard's story in the documentary, Stranger at the Gate, and Bibi Bahrami, a member of the Islamic Center in Muncie, Indiana, and founder of Awaken, a nonprofit that provides educational, vocational, and medical assistance to women and children in Afghanistan. Both Richard and Bibi are board members at We Are Many, United Against Hate. Our second panel, which I will moderate, is titled Words Matter, Building a Common Language. Our speakers are Aaron Stark, a mental health advocate who inspires thousands of people with the story of how he once considered, but did not commit, an act of mass shooting. Stephanie Chinke, who founded the Resiliency Center of Newton, Connecticut, following the Sandy Hook school shooting. And Jeanette Manning, co-author with her daughter Lauren of the book Walking Away from Hate, which tells the story of Lauren's decision to leave a white supremacist group. Our third panel, Evidence-Based Engagement of Success in Unity, will be moderated by Vic Joshi, our Director of Research and Special Advisor to the Executive Director. Vic will be speaking with Masood Akhtar, founder of We Are Many, United Against Hate, who was recognized by the White House as a uniter for his efforts to counter hate-fueled violence, and Amelia K. Thelman, a student ambassador board member at We Are Many, United Against Hate. Their organization works in communities to promote understanding, healing, reconciliation, and redemption, broaden equity and inclusion in educational institutions, and support a vision of America free from violence and extremism. We're deeply excited and grateful that joining Masood and Amelia on the third panel are three student speakers, Sasha, Danny, and Paula, who are participants in Project Belonging, an initiative supported with an innovation grant awarded by the US Department of Homeland Security's Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships. As the executive director of Project Belonging, I look forward to hearing about the innovative and thoughtful project that Sasha, Danny, and Paula have been leading in their school community to cultivate belonging. Before we begin the rest of the program, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of our panelists today, to my own team at the Interfaith Lab, to Trish McNicholas and her team in college events, and to all of you for joining us today. Please note that there will be coffee, tea, and refreshments available to all of you in the Everett Lounge right down the hallway, and we will be hosting a special lunch for all panelists and attendees in the Everett Lounge after the third panel. And now we will begin with our first panel, Resilience to Hate, Storytelling as a Portal to Prevention. And I'm delighted to invite our panelists to join me on stage. It's working. That's always important. So our first panel is entitled Resilience to Hate, Storytelling as a Portal to Prevention. And as I already mentioned, it focuses on Richard's extraordinary story of change and redemption. The story is the focus of the documentary Stranger at the Gate, which premiered in September of 22 and was featured by the New Yorker magazine. Richard, I've already shared the basic outline of your story, but could I ask you now to tell us why you were the stranger at the gate and how you transformed from feeling visceral hatred to embracing the community that you initially targeted?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for having me here. I'm very humbled to be here. I can actually say now I made it to an Ivy League school, so it's great. So as far as my role as the stranger, and to answer the second part of that question, all in the same, it's through ignorance. I was a stranger because I was ignorant, unknowing. I had no concept of what the reality truly was, because reality is subjective. Am I wrong? It's subjective in the fact that, yes, there is a white and a black to life, a yes and a no, an on and an off. That's going to always be there. But we never spend any time learning about that gray area, the what if area. We don't give ourselves the opportunity to learn about our fellow human beings. Color, creed, ethnicity, belief. Put all that aside. My change came, actually, I have no other reason but to say it was from divine intervention. My mind opened. I learned. I understood. Now, me becoming a Muslim out of all this has nothing to do with nothing. That was a personal thing, nothing at all. It was coming out of that hatred, which was the bigger story. And it's all through understanding.
Thank you. Bibi, more than anything else, it was your love and kindness that transformed Richard from the stranger at the gate and put him back on this path towards humanity and empathy that he has just talked about. I have a two-part question for you. That is what we do at Ivy League schools. We have multi-part questions. I promise there's no trick question there. First, tell us more about your own journey, how you left Afghanistan and built a new life here in the United States, where the themes of hospitality and welcoming became central to your life and your story. Second, why are hospitality and community building protective practices against hate and violence?
Good morning, and again, I'm honored to be here with all of you, and thank you for coming on this rainy day. This is a tough question. It's going to take a long time. I don't know if I'm prepared for this. Starting as a young girl from a village, and when Soviet invaded Afghanistan, we lost everything, and we walked through the mountain to get to a refugee camp in Pakistan, and lived there with my family with nothing. They gave us blankets and tents for 6 years. Totally blessed to be able to contribute in the area because of my background. Just tell you a little bit about that. My father always had home for homeless, always volunteered to run and give. But then in the refugee camp, we did the same thing. Security was not there, and we helped in any way we could with our fellow refugees and neighbors. And then I met my husband there, and he was also exchange student and from his high school, and he was put in jail by the invasion, and met him in the refugee camp, and we got engaged. And he came to America because he had an American family as a refugee to do his residency and apply for me to come here. Totally blessed to be able to come to beautiful Muncie, Indiana, and 86, and started my life here in education here. We're blessed with 6 children. I finished my education there. I went to GED like high school, and then went to university. And by saying that it was a community that I participated in different events and fundraising, and now we have a lot of nonprofit. We're a small city, but we have a lot of nonprofit. Just volunteering in my community, I was really inspired by the effort and the community member coming together and doing a good work, and have the opportunity to go to school while I'm still having children. Really inspired. I wanted to kind of give back to the girls and family I left behind in the village, especially after losing many family members. And when I thought about all that, I said, oh, I want to start my nonprofit organization, and so I can start like similar program for those women and girls in the village. And I started my nonprofit organization. It's Awaken, as you mentioned, thank you. Afghan Women and Kids Education Necessity. I say, oh, I have to be, women have suffered a lot through this. And then in my community, of course, I was still involved in many ways, but that was 9/11 had happened, and when I started my organization, there was hope for rebuilding. And as we all know, each community, each country, we have some people, they are not, I don't know when I call it ignorant. I don't know, my husband called it something else in documentary, but I don't want to say any name. It's just like education and understanding and getting to know each other and giving time to each other to sit down. And that was something we tirelessly did it, but after 9/11 even more, went to churches, invited church ministers to our home and cooked dinner for them, and community in the school, just to be preventing measure and proactive on what has happened. We condemn and went to all the school and churches, and my kids are in my children in school. By saying that, that's how we got involved in the community, trying to help and better understanding and respect to all people in the unity. That was the first part. My second part of the question was was about how the socialization, sharing food is a big part of my life. And by starting even my nonprofit, I invited all the leaders to my house, and whatever project I do, I have socialized, I do events, I do soccer dinner, tennis dinner. It's a huge part of my life, and been a truly blessed. I love to share, and especially with my own hand cooking. And by being involved has benefited my nonprofit for all these years, have been supported by many leaders in all walks of life in my community, many religions. And by saying that, act of kindness, inviting people over was normal for me. As we heard about Richard McKinney, that he is planning this, and some of the members, I'm the current president of Islamic Center, and my husband was president at that time, or the people were talking that you guys in the leadership were scared, this person is still coming to the Islamic Center. And by just, when I hear these things, I say, oh, let's sit down, and we're a crazy busy life, and I invited them over, those people who were scared and who had the constant, they were not coming to the center. And we had nice dinner, and after we had dinner, just to kind of share that thought with you while I'm going, and that's the time I opened the table. I sat down after I brought the tea, after he had nice food and dessert, and then I asked him that question. I said, this is what I heard the rumor, is that true? And he put his head down and put it up, and he was like, I could see his heart, and he was embarrassed, and he said, yeah, that's true. And that's how, you're opening that opportunity to people and sitting down. Everybody started a conversation and asking him questions and discover the whole story, and the comfort level started. And by just telling you that was not only just the invitation, sharing food, many time, getting together and bringing different people, but also getting him, I met him in one of the class at Ball State that I was just taking, and I said, oh, I didn't know you were a student, brother. We need somebody to be the MSA president, and we need you to lead that for us. He said, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, don't worry, I'll help you. But just getting him more involved in the leadership and giving him responsibility in the Islamic Center when people come, so they feel comfortable with you, stand outside and welcome them. And that was kind of the highlights of the story, and there is more to it, of course. Thank you.
Thank
Did I
you.
answer it?
Yes, that's an A+ response. Very thorough.
It was long, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and I do hope that I can get invited to one of those dinners. Thank you for sharing your story, Bibi. Josh, I want to start by first, on behalf of all of us here, thanking you for bringing the story of Richard and Bibi to a worldwide audience. On the face of it, Stranger at the Gate is a departure from some of your best-known work, such as the hit TV show, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. I don't know if anyone has watched. I love that show. I'm a fan. And movies such as the comedy War, Inc. What drew your attention to Richard's experience? How did it resonate with you personally? And why did you feel compelled to tell this particular story?
Sure. Well, thank you, and thank you all for being here today. It's an honor to speak with you. I would start by saying I have had Bibi's food and been to her house for dinner, and it's well worth the trip to Muncie. I would say, just to talk about the work, I feel like the work maybe in my mind is not a departure from Queer Eye and War Inc. I feel like most of my work is about trying to open people's minds and to change the way they might think about a group of people or an issue. And this film, I think, falls in that for me. When, first time heard about Mac's story, we read about it in a newspaper article, and I thought, oh my gosh, this, U.S. Marine goes to a mosque to blow it up, and the people are so kind to him that he actually ends up falling in love with them and becoming a part of the community. I said, I need to talk to this community. And so the first people I found was Bibi and her husband, and I spoke with them on the phone. And I remember just saying, so at a certain point you found out that Richard was planning to kill you. What did you do in that moment? And she said, well, we just invited him over for dinner. And I said, okay, I have to tell this story. I have to tell the story of this group of people, because that's not a reaction we normally take in any shape or form when we feel threatened today. We often close off. We often stop talking to people, even when we find they disagree with an opinion that we might have, or they have an alternative opinion. We sometimes don't even talk to them anymore. And this was an extreme example of staying open and trying to create a dialogue. And it resulted in this wonderful change, which is that instead of wanting to kill this group of people, Mac became a part of the group. And to me, it was just an example of the power of kindness, the power of staying open, the power of forgiveness. And so I was very drawn to telling the story because of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh, for having that courage to tell the story, such a powerful, transformative story. If I could ask you a follow-up question regarding the impact of Stranger at the Gate. You mentioned in one of your interviews that the members of your own film crew didn't want to stop working at the end of each day because they felt this was such an important story. Clearly, this is a story that drove your inspiration for telling it. What about your audiences? What have you observed about how your film has touched them?
So, Mac is a very compelling character, a very fascinating person. He's had an incredible life journey from, being in combat for 25 years in almost every major conflict that the U.S. has had in the last few decades, to becoming a man of peace and someone who's, touring the world, speaking about his story to try to change others. And, he's a tough guy. He's like, he has a skull tattoo on his hand. And I just thought, this guy is an incredible messenger. And to feature him in a film is a powerful thing. And what we found is that when the film came out last year, we were getting this incredible response. And it wasn't just preaching to the choir. It wasn't just reaching the people that already agree with us. I mean, sure, they were there too. But we were reaching people who were drawn in by Mac and by this story of a U.S. Marine, and it was opening their minds. And you know, we realized this probably around the time when Joe Rogan started talking about our film. You know, that was for me. You know, I'm not necessarily a member of his audience. I'm not sure if any of us are, but you know, when we found out that he was talking about our film to his, I don't know, 16 million listeners, we said, okay, we did it. You know, we're reaching people who we want to reach with this story. And he was so taken by this story and he talked about it several times on his show. And we felt like that was a huge victory. And if you look in the comments on our YouTube link to our film is on YouTube, so if you want to watch it, you can watch it for free. And when you look at the comments, the first 20 comments are things like, you know, I hated Muslims, and this film changed my mind. And then it's like liked by 1,000 people, you know? So it's and the film has been seen by over 2 million people now. So it's, you know, it's a small number, but it's a start. And yeah, we feel like it is reaching the right audience and having an impact. There's always more work to do, but it's a start.
Impressive. Journeys are always traveled by making that first step. Fantastic. Richard, you've said in interviews that all religions offer the same message of love and peace. Could you please share a story from your own experience that supports that idea? And more specifically, an example of different faith communities engaging with one another to create unity?
Thank you. That's a very good question, because we always are wondering what this faith is doing and what that faith is doing. I do want to say on the comments part, though, I did receive a comment one time, and this is probably my favorite comment of all time. And I won't tell you exactly what the guy said, because he speaks a lot like I used to. Very colorful. But he said, if a tough guy like you can change the way he thinks about things, I guess I can too. That's where it's at. That's that one person. Only one. That's all you need. That's that one person. On the different faith communities, yes, we have more similarities than we have differences. I will sit and argue that point all day long. I have seen, and I am a big proponent of interfaith work, because I believe that that's where our future lies. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I was at the D.C. March a few weeks ago for Palestine, okay? And while I was there was Jewish people, there was Christian people, there were atheists, there was of course Muslims, and they all came together. So I use this example of the hand to represent different faiths, okay? There's a lot more than 5, but let's just use the hand, okay? Like this, we can do things, but we're limited. We're limited when we have an open hand. We bring that together and we work close-knit, we're indestructible. That's our future. I've seen it happen. I've been a part of it. We have to learn to look to our left, look to our right, and say, they're okay. I don't agree with them. Don't have to. But they're okay.
Powerful. Bibi, you too are a powerful advocate, and in particular for the voices of women and children. Can you offer and share with us some insights on the role that women and children can play in building social connection and cultivating resilience to hate?
I think women are the strength of families in keeping communities and events together and throughout the nation, wherever you go. And we have, God has given each and every one of us a different ability and strength and weaknesses. And I usually say to embrace the strength and help with the weaknesses that we all have. And as a woman, we might have weaknesses, but I think the strengths are there that, unfortunately, we need to have more of those women in the leadership in different offices, and then we'll make a better world. I can give you one example. I'm personally example of coming from a village and not educated much, and just had the vision and the heart and understanding for families and be brought up in a family who cared about others. That has impacted me so much that I am able to help so many. And I can give you the example of the women in my local community who are leaders and the impact they have done in many ways in education and other necessities of life than a dire need. And recently, when I brought these refugees, there were like 37 families, and these women, I created a separate group for them because they feel comfortable. And I'm trying to empower them, like the mother role as a woman role. And I created a group for them so they're comfortable, that they can be resilient in helping their children. As an example, that's my mission and life that I work with many women in Indiana and my local community. I strongly believer of that. And if you educate a woman, you educate a village, or some of those things being said before. But I can give many examples of that, and I think we have so many powerful women sitting here, educated, and they have a wonderful experience. And I just wanted to give my thoughts. It's it's a foundation to our future and our success coming together as a woman leaders.
Thank you. Thank you, Bibi. And thanks to each of you for sharing your personal stories and lessons that you have learned. I'm going to conclude this panel by asking all three of you the following question. All of you were brought together through this story, the stranger at the gate. Can each of you tell us how the telling of this story has empowered you to see hope in a world profoundly affected by escalating hate and violence? And we can start with you, Joshua.
Sure, thank you. So we spent a year together touring the world, talking about this film and sharing this film. We did over 120 screenings around the world. And, often there were 400, 500 people in the audience. And we met a lot of people. And we had people coming up to us after the screening. And many times I saw people fall into Bibi's arms weeping and and it was tears of hope. They were tears of hope. They were people, like, for example, we screened at a hospital in Brooklyn, and one of the doctors came up to her after, and she just fell into Bibi's arms crying, and she said, I'm Ukrainian, and I've been watching my people die. And there are doctors here on my team who are Russian, and I feel hate in my heart because of what's happening, and I don't want that feeling anymore. And she said, I'm inspired by you, by what you've been able to do and how you've been able to forgive and inspire. And she said, you're my guiding star to help me with this. And we saw so many stories like that. And I think that, stories like ours and many others do have the ability to change people, to give them hope. And that's our hope, is that this film will give others hope. And so far it's been amazing. And we brought it to the Academy Awards with Malala. I don't know if you all watched the Academy Awards last year, but Malala was there and featured a lot. She was there with our film, and we've been able to really spread the word. And we ask all of you today, if you feel free to share our film and continue to spread the word. It's on YouTube for free by design, and so we hope that it continues to live on. And the last thing I want to say is, all of us are involved with, we are Many United Against Hate, the group, and you see Bibi has the pin, Mac has the t-shirt, and we are all now on the advisory board of that group, which I think you'll hear from Masood a little later, but I think they're doing amazing work that we all feel aligned with and want to support. So there are lots of groups like that are creating change and giving hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Richard?
I'm sorry, but would you repeat the question?
What is your source of hope? What gives you hope, and how did the telling of this story, empower you to believe that we can change the world?
I was in college later in life. I got wounded in Iraq, and VA paid for my college, which was awesome because I never graduated high school. Now I have 2 degrees. So that was pretty neat. But as I was learning and going through the changes that I was going through, unbeknownst to some of the people, I always told my professors, so I'm going to change the world. They said, okay, Mac, just don't hurt yourself. It's okay. I said, no, wait. So when the video came out and it got all this prestige, I went back to my professors and says, I changed the world. Told you. And with the comments like the one I previously mentioned, I mean, there's been many others. There's been some hateful things that have been said. I love that. I love that. Because I tell people I've been stabbed, I've been blown out of a building, and I've been married 5 times, and now I'm vaccinated. You can't hurt me. Okay? Bring it on, right? Bring it on. But the hope I get from all of that is what drives me. I quit my job. I was a life coach, believe it or not. But I quit to do this, to go out, meet people, speak with communities, and bring people to an understanding. We have a misconception in America especially. Well, actually, it's all over the world. I'm not even going to say just America. We're not special. We don't understand the differences between unity and uniformity. They're not the same. I will never preach uniformity. I lived that life for 25 years. I will never talk that we all need to be uniform with each other, because that's not how we were created. That's not how we were created. Or we were created like a ship, right? Ship's only safe when it's docked at a harbor. But it wasn't made for that, was it? We have to go out and we have to give forth the effort to unify beliefs, races, ethnicities, all of that. Things need to change in this world. I think everybody in here that has an IQ above 10 can agree with that. Changes need to happen. How are those changes going to happen? One of our founding documents starts out with, "We the people." I ask you, where's the people? We no longer can point fingers at politicians. We have to take the responsibility. We gave them that job. We have to take control. My hope is in the knowing that that's possible, but only through unity.
Thank you, Richard. Bibi,
Okay.
what gives you hope?
It's hard to follow those two. I'll share my thoughts. I personally, with my simple model that I strongly believe in, anything we do in life is just to have a good intention, followed by investment and hard work, and then respect people around you, and that project will go forward. And when Josh contacted me when we were going through this process, I didn't even know what Oscar was. I say, okay, and Josh said, he was Oscar. I said, no, Josh, we're gonna go to Oscar. But anyway, because it was done with that good intention, when I talked to him, I was so touched by his interest in investing into this message. Very, very touched by it. And that's why, even though I was not well, but I participated because I believed in the message, and it was a good cause for our shared humanity. By saying that, it was many benefit. I mean, the screening, like he mentioned, these women will come to me and say, after 9/11, a lot of Muslims were like not coming out of their homes. You know, they were scared. There were many fears. And some people come to me like, you give us hope. And by watching this documentary, like we can be existing in our community. And many people have other things, forgiveness, like what Josh mentioned. And how do we forgive? I say, you know, our faith helps our upbringing. You know, once you decide that within yourself, the forgiveness comes. But having these kind of people like Josh making this documentary, having interest in this thing, and having we many united organization like this and impacting our communities, our country, and locally, internationally, is a huge part of my heart. And respect to those who created and all of you who believed in this cause and who supported this, the stranger at the gate, and who giving opportunity to the we many united against hate to be in this beautiful place and this chance and this opportunity. We're very, very grateful for this, and very grateful for the opportunity of having this documentary to be shared, and we learn from each other and by having this opportunity. And I think the hope is, there is hope. Who supported this cause, who believed in it, who voted on it, that gives me so much hope. I know we get disappointed and discouraged with our human race, unfortunately. We haven't gone to that level. We should be on a preventing measure. We should not be causing the problems to each other and helping. My mission in life is to make life easy for each other, to help. And I would like to see more of this, and I'm already grateful to be a part of such an amazing organization who brought us here. Thank you to the many united against hate. We're very, very grateful in this amazing university for having us here. Thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you for making a difference.
Thank you. Let's offer our thanks to the first panels. Thank you. Thank you once again. And as we end the first panel and we transition to the next panel, and invite the next group of panelists to join me on the stage, please enjoy a video presentation on my forthcoming memoir, 3 Summers, that is coming out in April. Thank you once again. I would like to invite Aaron, Stephanie, and Jeanette to join us for panel 2. Aaron, Stephanie, and Jeanette have all had firsthand experiences with violence prevention and building a sense of belonging. And I am going to ask them now about the importance of words and how people build narratives that include or displace. Aaron, like Richard, you came close to committing an act of mass violence. How did the hurtful words of other people, such as your family members and peers, lead you to that dark place? And what words of kindness helped set you on another path?
Hello. Again, thank you guys for having me. It's a huge honor to be here, so thank you guys for listening. The words early on in my life were really, really impactful. I was told I was worthless, I was nothing, and that I was the bottom from the very, very start. And I really internalized that. I knew early on in my life that I was the broken one, that I was the one causing the problem, that I was the one that was deficient in some way. And I would tell myself that all the time, that I was the nasty one. And as I grew older, the abuse and violence at home and the abuse and violence in my schools. I moved around to 30 or 40 different schools, and it was continually that reinforcement that I was the negative one. I was the broken one. I would always go to a new school and have a whole new set of bullies. Then I would come home and try to express about that, and I would get even more bullying from my family, just continually degrading. And once you adapt that, when you tell yourself you're worthless enough, eventually you believe it. And then you try to do everything you can to make everybody else agree with you. And that's where I ended up at. I hated myself enough that I wanted to make the whole world hate me too. And the thing that stopped me was I was in the worst place that I could be. I was absolutely at the bottom of depression. I had been self-harming really, really bad and tried to get some help, went to social services, and that ended up being the worst thing possible. When my mom said literally the worst sentence that's ever been said to me, when after I tried to commit suicide, she told me that I should have done a better job and she'll buy me the razor blades next time. And that just proved to me that my lifetime of telling myself I was a monster was right, and that I should do as much as I can to cause as much damage as possible. And as I was falling into that pit, after trying to destroy myself socially for months, I was at the very, very end of it. I went to the only friend that I had left, and I went to him. And he brought me inside and showed me actual acts of kindness. When I knocked on his door, I felt like I was a ball of nothing, just a ball of disaster waiting to explode. And he saw me as a person in pain and brought me in and showed me compassion. And he just kept on telling me I was a good kid in a crap world, that I was a good kid in a bad world. And he just kept on telling me that over and over again. And that being seen, feeling seen when I felt not only invisible, but erased. I felt like I was just nothing. And to actually be seen and validated, it fundamentally changed me to my core. And that one time just changed my life in ways that I still can't even fathom to this day. So words were extremely powerful in my life.
Thank you for sharing that very powerful experience with us, Aaron. Stephanie, through your work at the Resiliency Center, you've come to understand common misconceptions of trauma and how to treat it. For example, expectations of survivors to get over it. How do words like these affect people who have suffered trauma, and how can the right words make survivors feel, as Aaron has shared, seen, recognized, heard, not erased?
So thank you for inviting me today, and it's an honor to be sitting next to two amazing humans, so thank you. So I have learned a lot since the Sandy Hook shooting. It was 11 years ago this past December. I didn't know what I didn't know then. I actually graduated here in 2003, did forensic social work in the city and in Connecticut, and lived in Sandy Hook with my children. And the shooting happened. So I opened the center, and we don't learn about trauma and response and empathy. No one teaches that. No one's teaching that today. And so over the years, as I have worked with people who have suffered tremendously, who've gone through horrific traumas, whether it be school shootings or other events. I spend most of my arena in the school shooting world, but other mass violence attacks as well. You continuously hear, "You're not over that? Move on. What's wrong with them?" Reactivating the traumas. And particularly, we have young kids in Sandy Hook going off to college, and we still hear them as they're in college saying, "I really like being away, but it's really hard because other kids, if you don't disclose, and even if you don't have that empathy." Instead of saying, "You need to do that," or "Get over it," what was that like for you? That must be really hard for you. How can we help with that? Whether it be an activity they can't participate in, like a paintballing event. Instead of saying, "Well, you're going to be excluded now," have some understanding of why that might be hard for somebody who's a survivor of a mass shooting. So we still have to continue to work on moving the needle. I think we have to start at a much younger age with our children, of showing kindness, showing empathy, bringing it back into the schools where they're learning, where kids are spending most of their days and hours, of what that looks like, to make sure that when they do grow up, we have better results.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Jeanette, the book you co-authored with your daughter, Lauren, Walking Away from Hate, Our Journey Through Extremism, thoughtfully describes how your love, and I would add empathy, as Stephanie has reflected on, and guidance as a parent helped Lauren disengage from violent extremism. In some of your other writings and in your work with the organization Life After Hate, you often use the word reconciliation. I'm wondering, how has the idea of reconciliation played out between you and Lauren in the aftermath of the experience that you had both gone through?
First, as everybody else has done, thank you so much for having me here. I feel very honored to be with everyone who's doing such amazing work. The second thing I just want to address is I still don't think I really had much to do with Lauren coming out of the movement. I think that was all her. I wish I had known enough how to help her out at the time, but you always learn after the fact. So thank you for giving me credit for it, Amra, but I don't think I deserve it. Reconciliation, it's funny, we're Canadian, we're from Canada, and we throw that word around a lot right now with all the original peoples, and it's, the school survivors, residential school survivors, and so on. So it's all about reconciliation. And I always thought of reconciliation in those terms. It's forgiveness and getting back together. The married couple who are separated, they reconcile. But in fact, it's also about having two different viewpoints that can live together. And at first, when Lauren started coming out with all of these new truths of hers, the Holocaust never happened, and the Jews controlled the media, she was 17, and I was totally shocked. None of this was what we had taught her. I had no idea where it was coming from. I couldn't reconcile any of what she was saying with what she had been taught, what she'd grown up with. And so it took quite a while. In fact, she had to leave the house for 1.5 years and live on the streets and live with her far-right friends. And a few things had to happen for her to start to have empathy, because as Stephanie said, empathy is a big part of it. And Lauren didn't ever have empathy. And as Erin was saying with words, Lauren always took words in her own capacity. She would take what you said and turn it around to fit her own narrative. And so it was very difficult for her to come out of the far right. It was very difficult for her to accept that we could live together as a family again, that we could reconcile and work through all of this. And eventually it was just, you know, we always say keeping the door open. I just kept the door open for her. And eventually she felt that we could rebuild the trust. We could have that reconciliation. And our relationship is incredible right now. It's wonderful. She's in a great place. She helps other former extremists get their lives back on track again and become productive people. And it's incredible. And I get to help the parents who are going through this learn how to reconcile their kids' beliefs, these things they're hearing and seeing, with who their children really are, you know, and it's difficult. Reconciliation is a difficult thing. It's a long process, but it's worth it.
Thank you, and it's inspiring to hear that your relationship is in such a great place. Let's delve a little deeper into the issues of isolation and displacement, which, as I mentioned earlier, our lab explores in the context of education and building resilience to hate. I'm going to start with you, Janet. Turning to you this time with a few related questions. This is that multi-part Ivy League school kind of question.
I'm in big trouble.
How do educational displacement and isolation make a young person vulnerable to recruiters from hate groups? And how did those feelings, for instance, play into Lauren's journey towards joining such a group? And if hate groups offer their recruits a sense of belonging, how can we counter their efforts in schools and in universities? What can we do?
Wow, that's a lot. Gosh, and I hate to say it, I'm going to forget. I didn't know what educational displacement was until you and I spoke, and I was shocked when Amra said to me that Lauren's experience with her grade 2 teacher was the beginning of her radicalization. And it threw me, but it has stuck with me through all this time because I see it. She had a teacher who valued the input of the cool kids, and all the parents who were cool, their kids were always the ones who got to participate in things. Lauren was shy and quiet and pushed to the back, so she never had a voice. And that continued. She felt awkward and out of place in her own skin too, and again, things that I didn't realize. But at school, she definitely felt shy. She felt awkward. Every time she made a friend, they would move away. So, you know, get to high school, she's thinking she's got a shot. There are different people there. But in our town, unfortunately, it's a very cliquish sort of a school system. So, you know, everybody's got their buddies already. Again, feeling like she didn't belong. Teachers, again, saying to her, you know, Lauren, why would you say that? And not really taking the time to listen to what it was she had to say, to explore her ideals. So I think she felt, you know, she had no voice. So when this recruiter from the far right connected with her online, and this was just a few months after her father passed away, when the recruiter connected with her, he was very smart. They are very smart people. He you know, made her feel like she was welcome, like she could express her opinions, like she had friends who loved her unconditionally. You know, there were no conditions put on these friendships. She was accepted, she belonged, and she felt powerful. They made her feel powerful by giving her this acceptance, by making her feel that she belonged, and anything she said, even if it was just regurgitated from what they had taught her, she was, you know, she was amazing. She was the #1 person in the world. So how can you counter that? How can you counter when someone is feeding your child what they really need and you didn't realize that they needed it? So that, I think, is number 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Third part.
What can we do to counter?
Counter it. Education. You know, the program you have, Reimagine Resilience, I would love to see it come to Canada because our education system refuses to believe that hate is a problem in Canada. We tend to think, you know, oh, it's an American problem because we see it on the news, but it is on the news in Canada. It's happening. again, we're from a small town. We're, 120,000 people. It happened to us all those years ago, 16, 17 years ago. So education is huge. I think we need to get it into the school systems, as you were saying, at a younger age. It needs to be taught tolerance, respect for other people, no matter who you are, or where you come from, what you practice. That needs to be put back in the schools again. And I do think the only way we're going to get through this is educating parents on what to look for, so you can see if your kid is becoming radicalized or could become radicalized. Teaching parents how to actively listen, how to be there for their kids and ask the right questions. Not, how was your day at school, honey? It's questions like, is somebody bothering you? Is there somebody who makes you feel uncomfortable? Is there something about yourself you're not comfortable with? It's delving into your child and getting them to open up so you can work with it. But a huge part, education. That's huge.
Thank you for highlighting that. We clearly are here because we believe in education and, as you said, prevention and engagement. Aaron, you have talked elsewhere about coming to the realization that the students and teachers you had planned to harm were not the enemies in your life, that in fact your hatred was directed at yourself. That kind of self-hatred seems like the ultimate form of self-isolation and self-displacement. How do we bring someone back from that point?
So yeah, for me personally, it was actually the particulars of it, I was going to either attack my school or a mall food court. And the time of day only difference would have been the time of day I got the weapon. But those weren't actually my targets. That was going to be the damage I caused to make my parents deal with creating me. I wanted to make them deal with the ramifications of creating the monster that I knew that I was. So I was going to cause as much damage as possible in as visible a way as possible, so that they had to deal with me afterwards. To touch a little bit on what she said, it really ties in with the thing that I'm doing with right now. I view my biggest opponent in my activism is what I call the negative social economy, where we think that there's these tiny islands of toxicity that then we have to address. We have the Reddit forums, the YouTube forums, the incel subgroups. They look like they're separate islands of negativity, when in reality, it's an interconnected web of negative social adulation. So take what I do, for example. I said I made a Facebook post that got viral. Now I did a TED Talk. Now I get to fly around to get to do this amazing thing talking at Columbia University. That's cool. Take the reverse side of me. Let's say that you're a kid who is 16 years old and you're harassing an abortion clinic so much they want to close their doors. Okay? Now, you're going to get tips on how to do that from this negative social economy and how to do that harassment better. Then you're going to get the social adulation when you do a really good job and you get the notice that you wanted to do it. And if you do a really good job at it and you succeed in the goal that you had, you're going to get all the adulation and basically the celebrity that you've been craving the whole time, and people telling that you're okay and that you're going to be good. I really feel at the heart of it that everybody wants to be held and told that we're okay. And if the person telling you that you're okay says you're okay, but to be okay, that person has to hurt, then you're going to make that person hurt. And I think that that's the biggest opponent that I personally face with all of this. And I think that the solution to it is to be the one person in that person's life that doesn't shift with all the chaos that's around them. For me, I had a complete lack of stability. I moved constantly. I had drug addicted parents that were running back and forth away from authorities and police officers and whatever. So I never had stability. I never had any kind of grounding. And to get out of that, I had to realize that I'm fine being me. I'm okay being myself. And I had to go through a period of acknowledgement to do that. But to get kids out of that these days, I really feel that the one person that saved me was my friend Mike. And he was the one person that didn't give up on me. No matter how many times I broke against him, no matter how many times that my chaos slammed into his life, I was sloshing back and forth in this tsunami of pain and anger, and he was like the island of normal that never broke in my ocean of chaos. He never stopped. When everybody else told me they were going to be there, oh, we're going to be okay, I'm here to support you, I'm here for you. Then when the chaos gets bad, they disappear and they vanish. And so it just reinforces that that's all fake. The one person that never left, and all he did was he never tried to fix me. He never tried to get me into a program to make me better. He never tried to get me into any kind of scenario where it was like it turned into a project for him. I was never a project. I was a person that needed love. And he treated me like with that respect. And that was the one fundamental thing that changed my life, is just being seen as a human and not as a checklist. Because the people who are the helpers, the therapists and the doctors, you're dealing with it at scale. So you're dealing with people that come in and it is a checklist. You have to go through these different things. You have to make sure that you're hitting your mandatory reporting lines. But for the person who's looking for the help, it can be like walking into a room full of spikes that are pointed inside. Because you don't know what you might say that's going to blow up your entire world. When your home life is abject pain and abuse and anger and depravity. And then you go to school and it's bullying and anger and toxicity and aggression. And then your friend group is anger and toxicity and aggression and bullying. How can you then expect to go into a counseling office and not say anger, aggression, and toxicity and depression? How can you think that you're going to express that in a realistic way? So if you go in there and the thing you say, if I were to go reach out for help in my darkest times, try to go to a counselor and say the reality of what was happening, my parents could go to jail, my brother could go to foster care, my sisters could go to foster care, I could end up in care, all because I tried to get help. And so the thought of that peril of destroying my whole world because I tried to get help for myself may remove the ability to get that help. Because if I don't know what I'm going to say to cause those spikes to collapse, then I'm just not going to say anything. And so the best thing we can do is give that place of acknowledgement and respect that I'm going to be here when you're done. That it's okay that you crash against me with your chaos. I can take that and I'm going to last. And when you're done, you're still going to be okay. Because I was okay when I woke up in the morning. And I was okay when I went to bed. And I told myself I wasn't. And I told myself repeatedly that I was the negative one. But I was lying to myself. And it took to realize that that was a lie for me to fundamentally change.
Thank you for those powerful insights and that important lesson of, I guess, self-humanizing as well through that process. Stephanie, in founding the Resiliency Center, you said that the kids who survived that awful day at Sandy Hook lost their innocence that day, and that their experience isolated them from their peers, which is something that you had already alluded to. How did the center help them realize that they were not alone? And can you talk about the role of verbal therapy and also the benefits of brain spotting and other brain and body-based techniques that the center uses?
So I first want to comment on what you just said, Erin, of that never good enough. I think we live in a society where it's never enough. Our kids are, what's your GPA? What sport are you playing? How many likes do you have on Instagram or Snapchat? And that is determining who they are. And it's never enough. Versus really getting and teaching kids to the core of who are they really? Who am I? And so I appreciate what you're saying, and we need to do a better job of teaching our children that they are enough. It's not about how many likes you have, what your GPA is, because that's all surface level, and they're always going to be wanting more. So thank you. So unfortunately, when I opened the center, with some help with some people who I see are in this room, thank you very much, anyway, from 9/11 organization, I didn't know, right? This was the first time, the youngest kids, these kids are 6, 7 years old, and families are looking for help, parents are looking for help, kids are babies, they don't know how to process, and any trauma is stored in your subconscious, even as adults. So how do we help to heal these young kids and adults and first responders? Sadly, since then, we've had many, many school shootings, young kids, all ages, malls, bowling alleys. So it's becoming more of a world where they're not so isolated. I think they feel like they're alone because people don't really understand. We've had a few families in Newtown that did move, did come back, and would say, well, I wanted to get Johnny help, but they just don't get it. I can't find a therapist who understands, or the teacher doesn't understand. We can't do fireworks. We can't do book slamming at school and door slamming or certain assemblies or drills. Drills are a huge one. Drills are very triggering. When you leave our community, most schools don't give parents a notice that, hi, School A is going to have a drill tomorrow, so if you want to talk to your kid and prepare your kid who may be anxious, let them know. And that can be really hard, so it makes them feel really alone. And our job is to raise children who can go out. We always talk about the patterns of stress. Stress is good for us if it can ebb and flow and we're healthy adversity. But it's not good for us when we have a lot of bad adversity and we have no connectedness. So we want to be able to connect our youth and children and adults to things that are healthy so that they're not so isolated. And when things happen, they can go on and live productive lives. So we really came at it as we're here to empower them to reach their full potential. Even as a therapist, it wasn't my job to tell you what that was, which is when we brought in brain spotting and MNRI, which were much different modalities that I actually had never heard of them. Both of them came to me from families who had lost somebody at the school that day. They had, at the internet, late at night, not sleeping, how can I help? What kind of therapy do I need? Found these two modalities. The brain spotting therapist, David Grand, is actually in Manhattan, developed it. He trains worldwide. It's very similar to an EMDR, which most people who have had any PTSD are familiar with, and was gracious enough to come to our community, offer services to the center at no cost, and train a bunch of clinicians. As well as MNRI is not local, so we had a therapist from New Hampshire who would come down quarterly, and that is more of a brain-body based, so it's on a massage table, because a lot of our trauma, like I said, is in the subconscious, so whether you're clenching your teeth at night or it's in your gut, you don't have to talk. So that was really good for the hard-to-reach population who doesn't want to come in and talk. And again, that's not for everybody, and it wasn't my job to tell you how you're going to heal, but just give you the supports and the structure to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for educating us all on some of these new techniques. And thank you all for sharing these remarkable and educational stories with us. I would like to conclude our panel by asking all of you the following question. Building on your own experiences and understanding of hate and violence, what would be one practice that you would recommend that all schools, colleges, universities should adopt in service of building our collective resilience to hate? One thing, if you could recommend for us. Let's start with you, Aaron.
So I regularly go present at law enforcement and federal agency conferences, and this is what I tell them. So I just told this to the FBI last month. I think that the biggest untapped resource when it comes to handling the toxicity in schools and just in general in this kind of phenomenon we're talking about is the students themselves. That the students walk around with the sum total of human knowledge in everybody's pocket. Everybody has every single encyclopedia that's ever been made right on their phone. They can fact check everything. And the police have solutions, and the counselors have solutions, and the teachers have solutions, but the students know fluently about what the landscape is they're dealing with. They know who's in trouble, they know who's on the danger of falling into the dark, they know what supports they can actually go to and which ones are not fully supportive. They know this resource, and they also know that a lot of times when they go and talk to the administrators, they hit this wall of red tape and self protectiveness that the administration seems to have, that it reduces the amount of effectiveness for the students to actually get that kind of help. I think the adults have indemnified themselves out of effectiveness to the large part. There's put up too many barriers to make themselves not liable or make themselves not responsible for any situation that might happen, that it has made so many barriers of red tape to actually address the help. Whereas if you talk to the students, talk to the kids who are actually dealing with it, when I give my presentations, if I talk to teachers, I have to fully explain my entire story and what the mindset was. The kids know. The kids know exactly what I'm talking about and know what that depression feels like. And I think that if we address them as respectable, almost equals in the situation, not equals in the sense of academics. Of course, you're teachers, you're teaching the students. But these kids are living a life that is faster and more intense and more information heavy than any person ever walking before. And if we don't acknowledge that and give them the human acknowledgement that, yes, you are a real respectful person dealing with this and have this information, then they're going to assume, as most students do, that the teachers aren't paying attention, that you're just not seeing me, and so I'm not going to go to you for help because you just think I'm a checklist. You don't see that I know what I'm talking about. Giving the interpersonal respect that the person knows their own life and their own existence and isn't just waiting for you to fix them afterwards is a very key component. That depressed kid knows what that depression is like. You don't have to explain to them what the depression is. They came to you to have someone listen and to help, not to then quantify them. And the biggest thing, in my opinion, is to be treated like a person and not a project. Treat me like I'm a human and not just an assignment that you have.
Thank you. Thank you for those powerful words. As a person, not as a project. Stephanie.
So I really think we need to go back to teaching our kids basic life skills. They cannot deal with conflict resolution. And therefore, I'm a believer there's no such thing as a bad kid. Kids have bad behaviors and they make poor choices, but there's no bad kids. However, they can't speak to people. They can't have, we talked about it earlier, can't we be right and left and just say, okay, we're going to agree to disagree and be able to work through that? So those basic skills of just how do we manage conflict, how do we resolve it in a peaceful way, it becomes very extreme. I also think in the schools, it's a responsibility, we need to make sure all our kids have that one trusted adult or one trusted person. Erin spoke on it, and you'll hear people talk about this over and over again. You need one person to save a person's life. And so it's our job. You don't have to be a therapist. You need to have a heart and to show kindness to make sure we can be that trusted adult for one person. And there should be no kid in any school in America or anywhere worldwide that doesn't have one trusted adult in their life.
I'm going to echo what both of you have said, because I think those are extremely important. And I think as parents, we need to be taught how to teach our kids respect, tolerance, how to instill self-confidence in them so they're not vulnerable to these hate groups, to the stuff they see online. Teach them media literacy so they understand when they do go to their phones, because they do go to their phones for most of their information, what's right, what's wrong, what do I trust? It really does go back to education, and I think, as parents, we don't get educated in how to raise kids, right? You're taught how to change a diaper, and that's it. But there's another 20-odd years of your kid driving you crazy, and you got to learn, the right skills to teach your children to be good people, and they really do need to have self-confidence. They really do.
Thank you so much. Thank you.